Hello, my name is Laura Guevara Garza, and my major is interdisciplinary studies with a concentration on bilingual. I think what I remember the most from learning science in elementary was how we would have to work on hands on experiments regarding nature and the outside world. I've always liked science in the sense that I can see science everywhere and I have a huge appreciation for it. When I was smaller, I thought science was only used by very intelligent people, and then as I grew, I realized that science was a much more reachable uh, subject, and that inside science there are many branches like physics or chemistry. I spent my whole childhood in Matamoros, so my science knowledge is based off of those experiences I had over there. I remember how the teacher always needed to have a big budget to make experiments happen, and I think the reason why I like science was because teachers would make us think of concepts that we never thought before. I've always been a curious person about the things that are around me, and I think that's why I like science. So I remember my biology teacher in middle school would tell us about moths and how these had the ability to adapt to their surroundings, and they would change colors according to the tree colors. One of the things that made it easier for me to like science was when I stuck to the subjects that I like biology or neuroscience. I remember I used to go home and look for videos that talked about how there are liquids in our brain that can make us feel certain ways in order to connect to our culture so we could learn. I think I think teachers would make us think of like the trees that were in our house to talk about evolution adaptations, or the procedures to make noodle soup to teach us about the scientific process. I think this was one of the reasons why I enjoy learning this subject because of the connections that the teachers would make to our surroundings. My grandparents were always asking me questions about my science assignments, and they'd be interested to hear my stories. I think when I would tell them about my day, it would help me remember everything I had learned. I remember I played soccer every other day with my peers in elementary, but I didn't think the science behind sports then. When I was in Mexico, I was in a public school, so everything I learned was in Spanish. I always thought I was going to have a hard time when I moved over here, but the beauty of science is that the concept doesn't change, only the language does. What I do notice is that children in the US have more opportunities in regarding of working with more interesting things than just growing up being plant. I can see how teachers want students to be more interested in this subject. I've seen kids have notebooks where they write their nature's findings, something that they never made us do when I was little. I always felt like I care more for school than most of my classmates. I remember we were about 25 Mexican students in the classroom, and only 4 of us would enjoy the lesson. Usually the students that like school was because their parents were educated as well, like they went into a higher level of education. I remember some of my friends' parents didn't even finish elementary themselves. Most of my classmates in elementary were very poor. These students lived in like wooden houses, and they had very little protection for like heavy rains. Some didn't even have the money to buy a notebook or a pencil. I think what I feel about science has a big impact on why I want to become a teacher. I think it's because I like to learn and I always like to think outside the box. Like if somebody asks me a question, I'm always gonna think about it more in more depth than other people would think. I guess sometimes I think too much for an answer because of the same thing. I love learning new material, and I like teaching things from science to others. I don't remember my parents talking to me about science and religion together. They were always separate subjects. My teacher in fifth grade would use strategies for us to pay more attention, like using different highlighters or making us read out loud. And now that I think about these strategies, since it was in Mexico, I noticed that this teacher usually actually used popcorn reading a lot during class. And I think one of the biggest factors why in my culture there aren't as many people pursuing a career in science like astronomy or spatial science is because it takes longer to pursue sometimes, or because parents say that you'll never find a job. Engineering is one of the majors I see my friends be interested the most, and I think it's beneficial because engineers are aware of many things that regular people aren't. And I was in a summer camp this summer, and it was for children in middle school that want to be, or well, they want to pursue a career in engineering. And I noticed that in this summer camp I liked it a lot because I realized that science was really in every single thing you see out there. Like, it's amazing how there is so much science in everything. Like, there's science in architecture, there's science in engineering, there's science in everything. Just like even the chair you're sitting on. So I think as teachers, we can use culture in our teaching through the connection of how we have science going on in our traditions or the sports that we like. I think we can show students that science is broken down into branches of studies, and how animals, sports, food, or even the place they're at has science on it. Thank you.